Welcome to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. In this podcast, we go deep into mining news, hot topics, and live interviews with mining professionals and leading figures in the mining industry. Introducing your host, Rob Tyson, founder and director of Mining International and Mining International Executive, a leading global mining recruitment and headhunting agency.
Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And today's guest is Scott Winter, who's the managing director of Critical Minerals Group, who are focused on the critical minerals required for energy storage and renewable energy. Their strategy involves acquiring, developing and producing critical mineral deposits essential for a sustainable future. Their aim is to reduce dilution and drive early stage revenues through strategic partnerships and corporate transactions, and to add value to shareholders whilst operating at the highest ESG standards. Scott is an experienced mine engineer with almost 30 years experience across all aspects of mining, including exploration, development, engineering, finance and operations, and has worked for the likes of BHP, Thiess and Perenti Group. He's going to give us an overview of the Critical Minerals Group and their strategy moving forward, a project update, and an update on the Vanadium and Electrolyte market and how the government is supporting their initiative. Scott, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Thanks, Rob. Lovely introduction. I'm doing really well, thanks.
Good to hear. Yes. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about your career, about yourself? As I mentioned, you've been in the industry for 30 years and obviously worked for some of the big companies around. So yeah, just wondering if you just tell us how you got in the industry, how your career's developed, working for those kinds of companies, to where you are today with the Critical Minerals Group. So I'll hand it over to you.
I will do. My kids asked me this the other day, and the number 30 came up, and I just had to look at myself in the mirror and reflect where did all that time go. Yeah, I did a mining engineering degree at the University of Queensland, which is in Queensland, Australia, and it's one of the premier sort of mining schools around Australia. Certainly, it's an East Coast school focused in, if you look at the East Coast, it's very sort of focused on coal and the likes. But we looked at both underground coal, open cut coal, and dabbled in gold, sort of copper and bits and pieces. So from uni, I really had this desire to sort of work in a practical environment. Mining gives you that sort of freedom, bit of entrepreneurial sort of creativity. So, and I think, the reason why I've sort of been there 30 years is because it's actually given me that. And there's so much diversity that you can sort of do and be a part of over that across the industry, that it's kept me there. It's been exciting. So, a lot of time with both the owner side and the contractor. So I have and I think the contractor side of me, and I'll sort of talk about the companies, but the contractor side of me has really driven me in terms of a cost focus, a construction capability, and just a drive for execution. So that is a sort of a fundamental underlying. I started off actually working for old MIM, Mount Isa Mines, which obviously Glencore owns now, but the first 2 years of my career, actually the first 3 years of my career were on the tools. So got all my tools and I really had a passion for working with the people and, followed the path of leadership and supervisor and management rather than the sort of the technical aspects. But I got those on the way. So MIM for 18 months and then I moved across into BMA. That was a sort of a family change at the time. But it was BHP Australia Coal back then. Spent 5 years with Australia Coal and got the suite of engineering capabilities, managing the draglines and drill and blast and scheduling all those aspects, coal quality. And then I really wanted to try something a little new, jumped into Thiess and spent 15 years with Thiess. And they were Thiess contractors at the time. And as I said before, Thiess was quite dynamic, growing at that stage, and really involved in new technology, new, I suppose, operational sort of ways of doing sort of business, and open up a few pits that, weren't historically open because of them being looked at too difficult. So we really grappled at some of the tough operational sort of mining techniques and made them work. And, I think that sort of brings into me this sort of sense of, well, anything's achievable. Just put your mind to it and just bring the right partners and people along, and you'll achieve something. So that's the first 20 years of the career, and then the last 10 has been, I sort of jumped out of that into a short entrepreneurial spirit and tried to do some corporate. Well, I did actually some corporate activity and went and acquired Mount Pleasant. Formed a company called Mac Energy and acquired Mount Pleasant as an asset, which is a sort of a greenfield off Rio Tinto, and built that. So within sort of 12 months of acquiring it, we were sort of in construction mode, and now it's an operating 10 million tonne mine and producing sort of high premium thermal into the market. I'm really proud of that. And the reason why I sort of felt I could do that and achieve that was because of sort of the Thiess and some of the information I sort of gathered out of working for BMA. But certainly Thiess gave me that ability to build something from scratch, take it all the way through to execution, look at the environmental aspects, look at the technical characteristics, and look at the sort of the people and the partnerships that you need to bring in to execute and build a mine. And they're bloody complex, right? I mean, so you need a lot of things to all go right to actually achieve these things. So that stood me in good stead to do the Mac and Mount Pleasant thing. I stayed there a short while and then had a little bit of time off, spent some time with family, and decided to jump out and join another contractor, but really wanted to do that to get some African sort of international experience. So I joined Perenti for a while, and that was super exciting. Had lots of time in West Africa. Again, contractor, but new clients, international exposure, funding requirements, equipment, how you sort of deal and double with logistics and things in an international environment. So that was a lot of fun. I finished up there. COVID actually pretty much sort of brought that to an end because of some of the restrictions there. Set up my own little consulting/services business and really trying to support the Indigenous communities in around central Queensland to provide services. So I set that business up and was helping and still help just on the side as a board member, an Indigenous group doing mining services in central Queensland, helping some traditional owners really create and forge businesses so they can create a sustainable model in their own communities. That's me. But about 12 months ago, I jumped into Critical Mineral Group, and there were a few reasons why I jumped in, and that was largely Vanadium, an exciting, new, well-supported commodity. Not a lot known about it, but I did a bit of digging, and it certainly has a big market in alloys, but at the same time an emerging sort of presence in vanadium batteries. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but batteries are certainly on the growth path. It's a great technology, the flow battery. And I suppose the other major reason why I joined was Idemitsu was a major shareholder in Critical Mineral Group, 34% ownership now. Follow their money, great supporter, know the technology, great contacts. So, two great sort of aspects, and I thought I could have a lot of fun. There's good people in the business, so joined, and here we are. What is it, sort of 16, 17 months later?
Yeah. Before we speak about the Critical Minerals Group, just going back on your career, obviously you worked for owners as well as contractors. Would you advise anyone to have that kind of split if they are working for, and obviously I'm a recruiter, I see a lot of resumes. If I see, and I see probably candidates that have worked mainly like for mining companies, and they don't tend to move over to the contractor side, would you advise them that it's good experience to go and work for the contractor from some of the things that you've learned, i.e. trying to build a mine, and obviously managing projects and managing it from a cost perspective, a time frame perspective? There's obviously a lot of skills that you can pick up by working for a contractor. Would you advise people to really consider that as their career develops?
Absolutely, Rob. I think you build a career by adding skills into your bag of tricks. And I think the more diverse you can, add to that bag, the better you're going to be. I think sitting in only an owner or only a contractor it doesn't give you all the sort of our characteristics that you need to be a well-seasoned sort of executive if you want to really stay into the resource sector. So look, a Contractor gives you that drive around cost control. You're making money on a margin because it's on the cost aspects. So you're very, very sort of close to the cost. What makes a dollar, what loses a dollar, how you ensure that you're really concentrating on the little ones and the twos rather than the hundreds and the thousands, because that's where the difference is going to be. I think that really gives you a drive around the construction, which is around execution. I think you learn really good project management skills being in a contractor versus an owner. And I'm not saying you don't get them in an owner, but particular skill sets as a contractor, because of that cost focus and very close, I suppose, reliance on getting the right cost, tendering the right cost, managing the right cost, having the right commercials sort of in place to ensure that you can actually claim the right sort of revenue. Pretty important. But in a contractor, you don't get some of the aspects that you do in an owner. So I say that the people sitting in a contractor, it's not the only world. An owner manages sort of the social aspects of the community. They manage the sort of in-depth environmental and the approvals, more of the resource, behind the scenes, the exploration side, managing, getting the best out of the long-term mine plan, and maybe funding or sort of if it's listed, then some of those aspects. So look, it's horses for courses, but you're going to get great things from both. Have an open mind, yeah.
Yeah, great. So I wonder if you can just tell us a little bit about the history and give us an overview of the Critical Minerals Group.
Yeah, thanks. Look, Critical Minerals Group was listed back in November of 22, and so probably 9 months before I joined, and raised some money, bought into Idemitsu as a major shareholder. Its main focus was vanadium and copper. They were the tenements that it had in there. They had sort of some copper tenements close to other operating assets and had some vanadium tenements that were close to some other vanadium tenements that had been explored by other companies, and there was some real sort of value sitting in them. So the focus has been on Linfield project. That's the primary sort of target within the Critical Minerals Group. And the two copper assets, what we've done and evolved over the last 12 months is actually work with True North Copper, another proponent who is a copper-focused company, and we're farming sort of that in, and they'll be looking to develop that asset. We'll retain an ownership of that, but our real focus at the moment has, and I've sort of shifted through our strategy to focus on vanadium and really downstreaming the vanadium side of things, not only being a producer of vanadium pentoxide, i.e. just mine it and dig it and there's a product. It's actually taking that sort of refined product that you produce on site and then taking it further downstream to make an electrolyte. So that's what we're very much focused on. A very simple strategy. You might see in some literature that we have some accompanying, high value elements and that are in there. The high purity alumina is something that actually builds up in the recirculating part of the process. So it can be sort of split out, refined, and made into HPA, and we've done that in a lab. And the other commodity that comes through, again, builds up is molybdenum. It's a well-traded commodity that we see as value, and we're actually sort of working on that sort of testing at the moment. But there's some other elements in there, some rare earths that build up as well. We're not focusing on those at the moment. But as I said, our primary is vanadium for the battery market, and we'll take some value out of HPA and molybdenum as we go through.
Yeah. You've recently just did a brand and strategy launch. Just wonder if you can just tell us a bit more about that and how did that go and what feedback I suppose you've got from the market.
Yeah, it's really good. You can probably see behind me, there's part of our brand and strategy, the new brand and strategy. And, what we're really showing in our brand, the new logo, is the evolution of a vanadium, which is a crystal. That's the sort of hexagonal sort of start leading to the other side, which is more a fluid. So we're taking it all the way from in the ground as a crystal element, all the way through to making a high purity electrolyte. So that's gone really well. It's been something that we've been doing over the last sort of 9-12 months and has really come to fruition of late. We we launched it off the back of some really great news coming from the State Treasury, which was a grant. So we got a grant from the government. I'll talk about that in a second, but we got a grant from the Queensland government to support the building of our electrolyte facility. And we thought that was a great platform to really set it off. But, the strategy was about culminating, look at what CMG as a business had, what and where we wanted to go, what we saw the market industry sort of pointing the opportunities or highlighting the opportunities were for us. And as I said, we've really then honed in on vanadium to make electrolyte, and electrolyte for vanadium batteries. So the strategy encompassed everything for a purpose. We wanted to support this sort of energy transition across the world so that communities could sort of get themselves in order and in a more responsible and sustainable way. Was creating a vision about us being a leading manufacturer of high purity vanadium pentoxide for then the vanadium battery market, and producing those with high quality. So I'm very much why am I doing this? So I really wanted to put the sort of purpose out there. We then put some thought around what are the three pillars that would really underpin our strategy, and that was really about developing an asset, and I call it secure and efficient supply. So that is about securing Linfield as an initial deposit, securing the deposit, putting the best approval sort of strategy in place to develop the asset, developing the asset with the best partners and EPC contractors as an example to bring that and contractors support the mining, and then to look at maximising the value out of the resource itself. The next pillar was really around downstream value creation. As I said before, it's not only about the pentoxide and selling a commodity, it's actually creating value, a leveraged value into manufacturing vanadium electrolyte, and that vanadium electrolyte going into batteries. But I suppose the other thing about downstreaming is what else pops up. And I said HPA and molybdenum before. It's about looking at the way we can extract those and create value out of those with very little additional capital, if any at all, because you've done all the work. And the third pillar was sustainable delivery. We sit right in the middle of, an ESG sort of credential. Essentially, we are supporting this energy transition from a carbon intensive to a renewable. We are providing the sort of electrons, so to speak, for, batteries to support the renewable energy transition. So ESG is very much a primary focus of us, and we could sort of saw ourselves being able to achieve some really high quality outcomes there, looking at installing ourselves a solar farm for energy with a vanadium battery on the back of it. As I said before, I have a sort of a connection to the traditional owners in various communities, but, very engaged the TOs in that area to help us sort of through the early stage of the business, and want to help build a business for them so that, that's sustainable in the long term. So it's been really well received. It's pretty clear. People have grabbed onto it and now understand where we're going, what we're pointing towards. I'm really happy with the sort of commentary that's coming back to us. For a team, our team, which is only small, but, as it grows, people can jump on, grab this, they know where we're going, they can buy into it, and, provides real clarity. And, in my view, it just answers a lot of questions without me answering, if you know what I mean. If you know the strategy and sort of the why we're doing what we're doing, a lot.
Yeah. Just wondering if you can just provide us an update on where you are with the development at the moment of the project.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
obviously, and also I was going to say development of the electrolyte business as well.
Absolutely. They are progressing well. So we've maybe I'll look at where we've completed in recent times and then sort of move into where we're going. So we've initially defined a JORC resource back in May last year. Before I jumped on, we defined a 350 million tonne resource. We then earlier this year defined a doubling of that, around 700 million tonnes of that, which has really come about because with little drilling, it came about just better understanding the resource, how it performed and how it processed, and what we should actually include in the resource. So we've defined that. We've done a scoping study successfully, which then kicked off our pre-feasibility. We're looking to have our pre-feasibility study done by the end of this year, and then our fees done by mid-next year, so end of FY20. One of the very first things I did, because we know the critical path is environmental approvals, so I jumped in and we started, as soon as I started, the approvals process to get some of the early background studies underway. So there, again, we're looking to submit our EIS mid-next year, which would be good, and then it's sort of open to the government, the departments to assess those applications for development. Could be sort of 12 months, who knows. We are doing a lot of bench scale lab metallurgical testing to prove up the flow sheet. We have a flow sheet that works. That's the first thing. So we've now matured a lot of the process so that we're moving into pilot scale, and that's just a step up, significant step up in the size of processing equipment that we're using to test our flow sheet, and that's going really well. It's ratifying the bench scale and in some cases improving it beyond that, which is great. And we'll look to continue that over the next sort of 3 to 6 months as we finish the feasibility study as well. So look, we should have a FID. Let's just say the approvals take 12 months. We should have FID all done and ready by the end of FY26. So essentially 18 months from now, 18 months, a bit over 18 months from now, that's my plan. So the electrolyte facility is the other in parallel process. Ultimately, what we intend on doing as an overall strategy is to produce from a mine our own pentoxide, which then gets consumed in our own electrolyte business. So we produce and manufacture electrolyte. But what we've done off the back of the grant is we're building a demonstration facility in a warehouse that is big enough to house a full style 10 times demo size facility. So we're building a demonstration facility, starting construction early next year. Now that'll be used to essentially improve the technology. I mean, the technology is off the shelf anyway, but we'll be building it so that we can refine the electrolyte for our customers. And there's various specs we need to meet, so we'll use that facility to refine and get the balances right. We'll use a third party pentoxide until our material comes online, because that'll be sort of 2 years while we're waiting for that material. And by the end of next year, we hope to be finished construction and commission producing our first litre of vanadium electrolyte.
And I wonder if you can just, I suppose, give us an overview, an update about the vanadium market and electrolyte market, whether you can speak to us about obviously just the Australian market, but also the global market in those two.
Yeah, I can. It's interesting. I mean, because it's pretty hard to get exact data out of the world. I mean, the majority of the manufacture of vanadium electrolyte occurs in China. The majority of, call it the vanadium flow batteries, are occurring in China. There are some massive batteries that are under construction or have been constructed in China, and some of those manufacturers, Rongqi as an example, are moving their cells, into Australia to sort of set up with some companies, one in particular, some joint ventures, but they're certainly talking to others around, supporting vanadium companies in Australia to manufacture batteries. But if I look at the sort of standing equation in Australia, there are a number of companies that are looking to develop their vanadium mines, a few in the west and around 4 or 5 on the east coast. They're different deposits. Now I'll come to that later, but no one is in production at this point in time. And on the east, it's probably within the next sort of 12 to 18 months that a mine will come online. And on the west coast, it might be a little sooner rather than that, but it's probably a smaller production. So it's early days from that. The electrolyte manufacture in Australia is again in its sort of infancy, and AVL doing some great stuff on the west. They've got a manufacturing facility that was recently commissioned, and the Veco group on the east coast have call it a 30 megawatt hour, 2 million litre sort of per annum facility that was built and talked about recently by on the news and sort of in conjunction with the government. That's up in Townsville, so that's producing electrolyte as well. So we will logically probably be the third producer of electrolyte in the country, coming online sort of next year. So overall market is growing. I think the overall market for pentoxide in the world's around 140, 150,000 tons. A lot of that's sort of China, but Brazil, South America, and they're the major producers out of China. Now, when we bring on production, it'll start to grow, but you sort of see growth projections requiring another sort of 60,000 tons, so a third of the current production by 2030. So I think we will likely be able to meet that with the oncoming mines that are coming in online in Australia, but there's a massive growth projection.
If we look at, obviously, vanadium, which is probably not spoke about too much within the mining industry, what do you see as the emerging opportunities for Australia for vanadium products?
Yeah, the majority of so there's two, as I said before, there's a number of mines in Australia. The major market is the alloy market. So vanadium is used to, strengthen, certainly it's used in aerospace, but it's an alloy product. So that's where 95% of the vanadium goes. The remaining 5%, and it's a growing proportion, goes into the vanadium batteries. Australia has, we know about the sort of renewable energy zones that are popping up in sort of on the East Coast and various sort of around Australia, but certainly there's some big ones in New South and Queensland, North Queensland, that are popping up. Premier opportunity for Australia is to downstream our pentoxide into vanadium electrolyte to support the manufacture of vanadium batteries, flow batteries in Australia, to support the renewable sort of growth. And we've got billions of dollars of investment that is predicted in these red zones, and they all need battery energy storage, medium to long-term battery energy storage, of which the vanadium battery is best poised and best suited to support. So I think that's the opportunity that we have, and that's going to require both the miners to bring to fruition the production of pentoxide. It's going to be a sort of the technology sort of support industries to help downstream manufacturing, like us with the manufacture of electrolyte, and then it's going to need the battery manufacturers that have got the technology to make the flow batteries. And there's, a number of those that are popping up. There's some in the US, there's certainly Sumitomo and in Japan, in Korea, likewise, some in China, but those parties need to all sort of work together cohesively, establish the sort of this value chain in Australia, so that, if I'm a customer and I'm in a renewable energy business and I'm looking for a BESS, then I go, well, there's a value chain I can tap into and get a readily accessible battery. That's our opportunity.
What do you see as some of the biggest risks to obviously your development, and how are you approaching them to obviously minimise any risks?
Look, I think there's a few. One of them is, on the East Coast where we're developing, and I'll just keep to us, we're in a region where there's been, 300-400 away, there's Mount Isa. We're in Julia Creek. There's not a huge community there. It's 2,000 people down the road. There's sort of Cloncurry and Richmond, not. So we're in sort of far north Queensland. There's not a lot of regional infrastructure out there, and that needs to improve. So the things like power, and the great thing is copper string is on its way from Townsville to Mount Isa. So government's putting $5 billion into a trunk line going from Mount Isa to Townsville, which is great. Water, it either floods out there, and I've seen it flood, and there's water everywhere, but there's not a lot of groundwater. You are using sort of the GAB, the Great Artesian Basin, which is fine. There's plenty of that water. So it's about securing the right water. And then sort of accommodation, and then regions, helping those regions grow their local infrastructure to support some of the needs of the mines as they come on. So that's a regional infrastructure is an important one. I think approvals and, development from the state government is another risk. It's subject to state and federal approvals. So we know, it's certainly it feels better than if you were trying to develop a coal asset. the vanadium. I think we're getting a lot of support from the government, and they're really sort of showing ways that they can speed things up. The establishment of the critical mineral hub in Townsville, the office is brilliant. They're already doing a social impact assessment for the region, so we can rely on that for our EIS submission. They're looking at a groundwater study that can help and improve that. So I think that's another one that is a risk, but it's being mitigated by the support the government's giving. And I think the last one is around resources and making sure that we take advantage of the collaborative efforts that all are doing. There's 4 or 5 proponents around there. There's a lot of smart people with resources, if they're combined and sort of looked at it from an efficiency perspective. We will take advantage of that and accelerate how these assets and the region gets developed. So I think the risk is that we don't collaborate. The opportunity is that we do, and we're already starting to sort of have those conversations, which is good.
Obviously, you mentioned there's vanadium on the west coast as well as obviously the east coast where you are. What are some of the differences or even similarities between your deposit and some of those in Western Australia?
Yeah, for sure. Uniquely, I think WA represents the VTMs, the vanadium titanium magnetite hosted deposits, and a lot of the deposits around the world are typically VTM deposits. So Largo in sort of South America and the South African bushveld are VTMs. And China has those, plus they're using sort of spent catalysts to recover vanadium as well, so different other ways. So VTM is got vanadium, it's got titanium and the iron sort of component. What they find is, and they're sort of a lot harder. We're in a clay hosted, so we're in a sort of a deposit called the Tullabuck. And it's very regional. It's the sort of floor of an old ocean floor. So you see lots of sort of shells and fossilized sort of shells and the like, but it's very fine. And that's where vanadium is hosted. It's very fine. So the guys in the West need to put a lot more energy up front in the grinding and the sort of sizing, whereas we don't. It's already fine. Our front end process is less energy and cheaper. But probably where they differ in the back end, which is more hydrometallurgy, which is in the West, they're looking at a sort of salt sort of leach approach, which is less acid, obviously, and it's a bit of a cheaper back end, whereas we're using more sulfuric acid to extract out the vanadium in there. So our back end is a bit more expensive than theirs. We're very regional as a deposit. There's certainly a lot out there, and it's about finding the hotspots, the higher grade. We're slightly lower grade than the West, but that doesn't matter because we actually concentrate really well. When you go through the process, it concentrates really well. Other differences, you could say Queensland is super supportive as a state in vanadium. That's a critical mineral. It's defined in a critical mineral zone. It's a bit of a hot topic, hot commodity at the moment. There's a lot of commodities in WA, so I don't think it gets pulled out as particularly as it does in Queensland. I mean, it's supported, but it's Queensland are really very much behind the vanadium battery sort of sector in growth opportunity.
Yeah. What government support do you get as a company and for the vanadium industry? Obviously, you mentioned grants, but is there anything else the government is supporting you on, whether there's funding, whether it's technical? How else do they get involved?
Yeah, really, really good question. There's lots of aspects. I say from a funding perspective, in a few ways, they are funding the support of the power line from Townsville to Mount Isa. So that's a regional infrastructure one. Through the grant, they're looking at the construction of, they've already sort of issued this, the construction of the QR cuff, which is essentially a demonstration scale. There's 75 million allocated to this, a demonstration scale vanadium facility in Townsville that we can all use. The grants, there are various grants out there to support critical minerals. Ours is a sort of a battery technology fund, that's the electrolyte aspect of it. So the funding is coming through genuinely. Government set up the Critical Mineral Office in Townsville, and that's going to have around 12 people within it, which are from all aspects, approvals, environmental support, infrastructure people, trades people, and various other advocates to support both the technical aspects and the development aspects of the resource sector for critical minerals. They, as I said before, they're looking at the studies, the social impact studies and the groundwater studies. For that's almost unheard of. For them to put their money where their mouth is and do those studies, which takes it off the requirement for a proponent like us to do. We might have to do some tweaks around the edge just to be sort of site specific, but that's a terrific cost saving and sort of speed for our application for an EIS. Look there, and then from a technical aspect, they're supporting the sort of engagement of QUT and UQ and other universities around, so that there's collaboration across the universities and the technical aspects. It's really quite encouraging.
And lastly, what's the sort of short to medium term outlook for Critical Minerals Group? And if there's anything else that you would like to add and inform our audience on?
Yeah, we've got a really terrific supportive shareholder base. They're very supportive of our strategy, what activities we're underway with at the moment, and that's terrific. As I said before, we've got the next 12 months is very clearly mapped out, and is a big step ahead of us. And we'll be essentially at a point where our approvals submitted, all of our studies are telling us exactly what we need to do. We'll be looking for partners to assist with, on the back of a successful feasibility, on the partners to help and assist build a facility from out on the Linfield perspective. But at the same time, our electrolyte, the next year we'll be looking and talking to customers around the sale of the electrolyte into batteries. We may even sort of push ourselves down into supporting and partnering with battery manufacturers for assembly in Brisbane. And, that's terrific. So I think if you talk to us in 12 months' time, we'll be quite a different looking beast. Same brand, same strategy, but certainly well progressed along it with more resources in the team, and probably getting even faster in sort of outcomes that we're trying to achieve. So really exciting. As I said, we're well funded to do all of the activities we've got, and really supportive shareholder base that many more are trying to jump on board as well. So pretty happy with that. I just need to keep up.
Yeah, great. Well, it looks like you bagged yourself another podcast interview in 12 months' time. So happy for you to come on and give us an update in 12 months as to what progress you've made. So Scott, really appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing your story, telling us about the Critical Minerals Group, obviously Vanadium as well, which is not necessarily spoken about too much, but like you said, it is a critical mineral and it's on the critical minerals list. And obviously it's important for the battery sector moving forward. If our audience wants to contact you, reach out to you, follow your story, and find out what Critical Minerals Group, how they're progressing, how can they go about doing that, and what social media platform channels are you on?
Look, we're on LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn, or Critical Mineral Group on LinkedIn. You can jump on the website, criticalmineralgroup.com. You can email swinter@criticalmineralsgroup.com.au. And there's an info line there. Jump on, we'll get you on the newsletter. No dramas at all. But yeah, multitude of ways. LinkedIn's usually pretty accessible. Send us a message.
Yeah, we'll include those in the show notes to accompany this podcast. So wish you well for the remainder of the year, which is only a few months away. And hopefully we can get you on the podcast in, say, 12 months' time, and you can give us an update on how things have gone since now for the next 12 months.
I look forward to it. Thanks, Rob. Thanks to your listeners. And please jump on if you've got any queries. Just let us know. But Merry Christmas if I don't talk to you. And
yeah, no worries. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, appreciate your continued support. Please keep sharing these episodes far and wide. The episode doesn't need to be just shared within Australia. Want it to be shared sort of globally. And also, to people outside of our mining industry. The only way we're going to, I suppose, improve the branding of our industry, and because obviously people have certain perceptions of mining, but we can only the masses outside of our industry by sharing obviously episodes like this. So as always, thank you for listening. Until next time, happy mining.
Thank you for listening. Remember to reach out to Rob via the show notes and be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, happy mining, helping each other to improve the mining industry.